kind of what this entails is I'm going around and figuring out leadership stories. I think there's a big crisis of purposelessness among people my age. And I think that the possibility to talk to people and learn their stories could help alleviate that. So
Are you
let's
doing
get
this
right
for
into it.
you, for a project, for a what? Is there more context there?
It's a combination of research and outreach. Really, it's I don't know what I want to do with my life,
Mhm.
and I figured the best way to do it would be going around and learning other people's stories and figuring out how they found out what they wanted to do, and then sharing that and seeing if I can help other people my age.
Cool.
The name of the project, I'm calling it Learn to Share, learning with the intention of sharing, and then also learning to share myself, like share without the expectation of getting anything back.
Cool.
So my first question for you is, where would you say your story starts?
Uh, of like how I ended up in the role I'm in.
Um, yeah, like where did you start? I know you started at HP, but how did you get into that out of Miami U?
I mean, I don't think I knew what I wanted to do either, and I honestly think most people don't. So I think you might be holding yourself to too high of a bar early on. Um, I I was when I was in college. I was originally in there for computer science as a major, and then I had marketing. I was double majoring in computer science and marketing. Realized it was going to take me too long to get through school if I did that. So I originally chose computer science. Then I realized I didn't want to be behind a computer all day, and ended up choosing the marketing major instead, not realizing that no matter what I did, I was going to be behind a computer all day. So it didn't really make a difference. Uh, I think, I mean, at that point, all I knew was I wanted to do something with business, and I like technology. That was probably about it.
Okay.
And that was probably more a process of elimination than was anything else. It was like, I didn't think I wanted to be an engineer. I didn't like physics. Uh, there wasn't a bunch of other stuff that I wanted to do. My dad was in sales. He made good money. Always seemed like he told me not to go into sales specifically, uh, over and over and over again. But it always seemed like his job did seem enjoyable to me, but I was never going after doing a sales job. Like if anything, I still probably was in the mindset early in college that I wasn't going to do sales.
Okay. So you started as a computer engineer, and then your dad sounds very similar to mine. And kind of you saw he was in sales, thought, hey, might as well go into it myself. And so in in getting into it, I noticed I stalked your LinkedIn a little bit, to be honest. I saw you had a very kind of linear progression from AE all the way up to SVP at Gong, right? And in doing that, there must have been a chapter that you would say is the most difficult. Um, the chapter where you really kind of learn the most. In the last interview I did with Cody over from Use, he said that one of the hardest things, and you also touched on this in your talk over at SaaStr, was the transition from that AE salesperson to an actual leadership role, and that leading a sales team is different from selling software. So my real question is, um, what has challenged you the most in your time in sales?
Uh, I think that my career looks probably linear to you from the outside. It wasn't. It was not as linear as it looks. I mean, my titles, yeah, I guess, but there's actually some pretty significant changes that happened in there. I mean, I started a big company. I started at HP. It was 300,000 employees, the largest tech company at the time. Google and stuff wasn't as big as it was now, uh, and did well there, but was just a number. Was overperforming, but couldn't get raises because of rules inside the company. And then so I decided to go to a startup. I made a horrible mistake and went to a company called Eventbrite. Lasted for a year and a day just to get my equity and left. That was probably the hardest time because I walked away from a job that I was making pretty good money out of college. I was making probably like 110, which for that at that time was a ton of money. Now it's not as big. And I went to a job that I got paid like 70K. And I wanted to do it because I thought that I wasn't sure if I was good at selling or if I was selling a product that sold itself. because HP was the biggest company in, biggest tech company in the world. And I realized how much it sucked to have your income cut by 40%. I went to start to go to cold calling. Nobody knew who we were. So I was cold calling. I was, doing the full cycle. I had almost no resources around me as a sales rep. I had a very, very shitty manager at the time as well. And so felt really good about myself in the HP job. I was top performer, surrounded by people that were much older than me, telling me how great I was, to, being like, definitely took at least 1 or 2 steps back in my career, not realizing that's what I did. So I think that was probably my hardest time in a role. It exposed me to the level of work I was going to have to do, and if I really wanted to be successful, that was that job, because HP was pretty easy.
Thank you. All right, I got really 2 more questions for you. One of them is, where do you find value every day?
I think it depends a lot on the day, if I'm being honest. The thing I like about my job and I like about working in startups is like problem solving and creating change. In my personal life, I'm the same way, right? I do projects on the weekends and I'm always doing something. And so I think that's where I tend to find the most joy is I need a reminder a lot from my wife, honestly, to recognize how far things have come. And so I try to take stock of what I've accomplished over the last week, or what I've accomplished over the last month, or what I've, so it's a lot around how much change have you been able to facilitate?
Okay. What project are you working on right now, kind of at home, if you mind my asking?
I've got a couple of them. What I'll do this weekend is I got some plumbing done. I got to fill this hole back up and cover it with gravel. We ran sprinkler lines a little bit ago, and I want to extend the sprinkler line to go above this other area. So I'll probably do that this weekend too. That's probably it for this weekend, but those are some of the bigger stuff.
Pretty neat. All right. And my final question for you, please take some time to think about this, is how would you like your story to end?
I'm doing this so that I don't, you find out really quickly. I see this people all the time. I've hired probably 1,000 people. I've let go of probably hundreds. One of the things I say, especially when people are earlier in their career and I'm interviewing, is I'm like, you are going to know really quickly if you like it here or not. And when I mean here, it's working in a startup is not easy, and it is not for everybody. I'd say it's probably for 20% of people. 80% it's not for you. And even the people that it's for, it's not for everybody. And I think there are people that get a lot of joy out of it and want to do it forever. There's people like David Sachs, where I'm like, dude, you've got so much money. How do you not just stop? And they're just driven by it and they love it and they blah, blah, blah. That's not me. I'm not that. I am in tech sales for a couple of reasons. One, I like problem solving, right? Like I told you earlier. 2 is this gives me an opportunity to not have to work for the rest of my life. And so if I can do this right, I don't have to do this forever. And the idea of me going to a factory job and having to do that every day for the rest of my life and knowing that's what I have to do is depleting to me. And so the way I'd like my story to end, and I'm still hopeful it will end that way, is that I get to retire in the next couple of years. And then I get to have a new life, and I don't know what that life looks like yet. But I don't think I'm going to know until I can walk out of this one.
Thank you so much for that. That was a really interesting answer. This interview series, thank you for doing this with me.
I have more time, by the way, dude. I know I said 20 minutes. I could go I did that because I figured you would go to 30. So if you want to talk more, I'm happy to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'd love to ask a couple more questions, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
Just in your career, would you say that you have, now, please understand that when I say the word failure, I'm meaning a state. It's not a bad thing or a good thing. I see it as Mother Nature's greatest teaching tool. What would you say is your proudest failure so far?
And by the way, I think I've got plenty of failures that I fail lots of times. Monthly, I have pretty decent failures. Greatest failure. Probably Zenefits, my time there. I don't know how much you know about Zenefits, but we were the fastest growing tech company in the world. That was where I got my promotion path and got into sales leadership. And that was a spectacular. Do you know anything about Zenefits?
No, please. I'd love to hear the story.
Google real fast Zenefits.
Okay, let me pull it up in another.
You mentioned to Zenef. It's still a company name, like Zenefit and maybe News. Let's see what happens if we do that.
And you want me to look up news?
Didn't work. Just type in Zenefits and what would be the like crash or downfall or something like that.
A BuzzFeed article. Looks like in 2017 they really had a big crash and burn.
So
in case of overhiring.
It wasn't overhiring. We got a bunch of compliance. A bunch of stuff happened. We overhired. We got in a bunch of compliance problems because we were operating in an industry that didn't want us in it, basically. And so went from, we were literally the fastest growing tech company in the world at that point in time. And like very proud of the fact that I was at Zenefits. I have gear that all said Zenefits on it. You'd walk around and people would be like, oh my God, you're at Zenefits. To it feeling like I would never get a job again because of the bad notoriety that it got. So if you wanted to have some fun, read through all the stuff that happened. But it was like WeWork before WeWork crashed. Like if YouTube was around, if Netflix was around, then I guarantee you somebody would have done something on it because it was like a big deal. My parents saw the articles about it. People didn't know what I did, but they certainly heard when the company crashed. So that was a massive failure. Some of it in my control, and I look back and I was like, I wouldn't do. I should have done that differently. A lot of it I learned about what I look for into my next company, which my next company was Gong, and how I would run a team differently, etc. So I learned a crazy amount from it. I wish the story ended there differently, but I also think that I definitely would not have learned near as much as I've learned about running a business if it weren't for what happened there.
So to expand on that, what was your biggest takeaway from Zenefits, if you could just list one?
To not put revenue first. I think that in this, we like our being, or like our identity, Zenefits, was about how fast we were growing. And because of that, right, it wasn't like what we were doing actually was really cool. We were disrupting the insurance brokerage industry, which is ripe for disruption. Still needs to be disrupted. Nobody's done it yet. And that should have been our driving force, like how much money we were putting back in, in companies' wallets. Their second biggest spend is just going in the pocket of some random dude who's doing very little for them. And we were taking that money and making it much more effective and actually helping businesses. Like that should have been our driving force, not we're the fastest growing ever. And because instead we were the fastest growing ever, right? That was the mentality. And I think we ended up doing, wrong by a lot of customers because of it. We ended up making some dumb decisions because of it. But I think if we were focused or like had our identity based off of how we were actually helping people, it probably wouldn't have stopped all of it, but at least would have probably slowed some of it down.
So kind of having the right direction when you're in an organization. Would you say that would be a quick way to
right spirit? I mean, I think like in general, like people often are like, sales reps especially operate based on their comp plan. Like they will only do what you pay them to do. I don't believe that's true. I think that there are several levers that you can use to get somebody to behave in the way you want them to. One of them is compensation. It's probably the most dramatic out of all of them. I think another one is just like purpose, right? The purpose of what we're trying to do here is blank. And I think that can guide people, right? And like, if you hire the right people, I think it guides them. There's other stuff you can do, spiffs and blah, blah, blah. But yeah. I think we had the wrong purpose from the beginning.
Thank you, Jameson. And thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me.
Yeah, have a good one, Daniel.
Nice to meet you. Me too. I hope to see you around.
Sounds good.
All right, sounds good. Bye.